That's the GOAT episode, so please.
Yes, I'm gonna listen to it again. But my question is, how much equity, because I know 5 doors or more is considered commercial. So after I do my 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm ready to start commercial, how much equity do you suggest that I have before branching into the next monster?
I don't care how much equity you have in your residential properties. When you're going into commercial, you just need to have your own capital. And you don't need to have your own money, right? So a commercial property, 5 or more units or mixed use, you're gonna have to put down 25 to 30% plus your closing costs. But you don't have to put out all that money. You can use business credit, you can raise capital, you can do what's called a capital stack, where you can come up with that 25% in your closing costs through numerous different things, and then use the bank for the 75%. So, but the main thing is you're gonna need 25 to 30% if you want to step into that commercial world, because commercial is, like since we're in college, it's like in your master's, right? It's like graduate school, and residential is more like undergrad. So you gotta really step your game up if you wanna get into the commercial world.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions? Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Legal pledge.
Thank you. Anyone? Questions?
So, I own a condo, and they're building a lot of property where I'm at, and I keep getting these phone calls. Are you gonna sell? Are you gonna sell? Are you gonna sell? Are you gonna sell? Why do they keep calling me out of nowhere? Like, it's literally, they're even texting me now, like, are you ready to sell your property? And I'm like, no.
Well, they want your property. They're looking for people who are desperate.
Is that because they're building something around me? 'Cause
Well, what you always have to do is you need to go to your zoning departments and see what the 10-year plan is for your area. It's all public record. So yeah, it could be a possibility that a Starbucks or McDonald's or a hospital or something is coming. You just gotta look at the development plans for the town and the area that you live in. And I'll be able to tell you why people is calling you. Because if it is something big, it's gonna be in those plans. It's all public record. So you have to look into that, like tomorrow.
Thank you.
It's the Chick-fil-A. Big Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A comes on.
I actually wanted to have a question, because we talk about this all the time, and that sounds like it could possibly be some kind of gentrification, but gentrification, that word gets thrown around a lot. I talk about it with Drew and our crew. We come from predominantly African American, now actually majority Hispanic communities. There's a lot of developments that go on in the communities, and a lot of people say, oh, it's gentrifying, I got a Starbucks here now, or this, that, and the third. What would you say to individuals that if a community is starting to have a lot of development and they do own within that community, like what decisions to make as far as just, I would say, working with developers or allowing more development? Does that raise property? Like the big thing for them is always it's going to decrease my home value or this, that, and the third.
Gentrification don't decrease yours, it's going to increase your value. You want your neighborhood to get gentrified. I don't know why people are so against gentrification.
Can you say that again, though, please?
I just don't understand it. I really don't understand why people are against it. Like, what do you still want your neighborhood to look like the hood for? Don't you want a Starbucks? Shit, I like Starbucks. It's convenient, right? I want a Target up the block. You know, that's, if I'm an owner in that neighborhood, that's only going to appreciate it. It's going to put home prices at a certain level. But on the flip side, it might displace a few people in the neighborhoods if they are renting. That's why ownership is key. Because if you own it, then you ain't got to worry about being displaced. Right? People think it's their block, but you don't own it, so it's not your block. It's somebody else's. You just rent there.
Yeah.
So as a tenant, you have no protection. You're a tenant. You sign a contract for a certain period of time. And after that contract expires, as a landlord, I have the right to raise it according to where the market is. Now, I'm a compassionate capitalist. I love my tenants like I love them dearly. I want them to pay me every month. So I'm compassionate. We know exactly who's in what situation. You know, my property managers do a really good job at that. And we want to make sure that, especially during COVID, when people didn't work, we gave people months off. We told them it's okay, pay half the rent, whatever the case may be, because you can't be a slumlord. You know, these are people at the end of the day. So I don't think gentrification is a bad thing. I just think sometimes people get the wrong idea behind it because might get moved out the neighborhood because they just can't afford the rent no more. But ultimately, everything is going to go up. Like, what do you want things to be? Like the prices, like it was in 1980? Like, it's going to go up. But I think what people need to start focusing on, real talk, is just streams of income. We're too focused on rent going up, home prices going up, but we're not as focused on making more money. Why are we content with having one source of income? One source of income is too close to being broke. I preach this every single day. Everybody in here should have a book. She bought 3 books, thank you. I love it, it's my intellectual property. We all have something that we can talk about. We all work a career, a job. We've been doing it for 10 years. You're learning something here that somebody behind you wants to know. You can make somebody's life a lot easier by putting out a book. Like, what you do for a living? I'm fat. I will buy your book, right? Because I need to know how to lose weight, right? You got a whole target market. So everybody here has intellectual property. You just got to put that content out and focus on getting more streams of income. Because if you get more money, you're not really thinking about the price. You think about how can I invest more. So that's what I think about gentrification.
No, I love that because that, again, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but I never thought of it like that. That was very key, is that the people that are getting displaced are renters. So if it was more homeowners and it really wouldn't be gentrification, it's actually elevating our own community. So that's a very, very important part, which we don't talk about enough though when it comes to that specific. We need to align those two terms more. So before we close, I'm sure, all right, Marcy, here we go. There's the hands. Hold on. Where's my boy at?
Slipping, Fudge.
Slipping.
So a question that I had was, you talked about refinancing, right? So obviously there are time frame when it comes to that, and also where interest rates are at. So can you talk about that some more? Because people typically hear refinance and always think it's a good thing without having the strategy behind it, right? So can you kind of cover that some more?
So refinancing, first and first, refinancing is not a guarantee. I need you all to know that. It's based on many different factors: credit score, your income, debt to income ratio, home value, your loan to value, LTV. So there's a lot of different factors when it comes to refinancing your property. But if all things line up and you are able to refinance, then I will highly recommend at least dropping at least 1 to 2 percentage points when you do a refinance, so that way you can get maximum savings. Me personally, I'm big on extending my mortgages out, so I'll go 30-year, 40-year, hell, they can give me a 100-year term, I don't care, right? Because the only thing I care about is cash flow. How much money am I putting in my pocket every single month? I'm not worried about paying off a mortgage, so to speak, but refinancing is a great tool. Everybody refinances, you know what I'm saying? And you gotta use that tool to help you build wealth. And when there's opportunities out there to pull the equity out, but make sure you have a blueprint for it, because you don't wanna mess up the church's money, especially if you're taking it from your primary residence. You know, you gotta think that's another bill on top of your house, on top of your household. So you gotta be responsible about that money. So if you pull out 50, 100K, whatever it is, have a plan of action. Don't go to Dubai and have a great time.
I wanted to ask you something about that actually. So you just mentioned you wouldn't even care if it was a 100-year mortgage. So what about people that say to pay down debt free? Like, you don't want to have a mortgage that's actually more of equity.
Debt free. So I do not subscribe to Dave Ramsey. And what he talks about, I think what he says makes sense, but it makes sense for certain people. I'm just not one of those people. I'm a risk taker. I need to get to a bag. I'm not worried about paying off no debt. Forget that. I need that debt for tax write-offs. It's a benefit for me to have mortgage debt. It's a benefit for me to have credit card debt, especially because majority of my cards are in my business name, right? So that's all deductible. Then I get points and I can travel and do other things with that, right? So it's all about your mentality of how you look at things. Now, some people can't have debt because it just drives them nuts and they just have so much anxiety behind it. And that's good for them, right? Different strokes for different folks at the end of the day. I'm just telling you what I do for me. And for me, I don't care about paying off loan. Hell, I mean, I never pay off a house. And I have paid off cribs, but they were Cleveland houses. houses, couple $1,000s, I don't really count those. But I'm talking like my primary residence, I'll probably never pay off my primary residence. I got a 2.75% on 9,000. I'm never paying that thing off. That's free money for me. And I get to deduct it, why pay it off? So I have my money stuck that I can't take it out. I gotta remember, a house, if it's paid off, that equity is not yours. That shit is monopoly money. It's not real until you take it out. It's like your brokerage account. When you see your brokerage account up, you got gains, it's in green, it looks good, but until you take that money out, it's unrealized gains. It's the same thing with home equity. So for me, why would I, God's green earth, pay off something that I know is not going to benefit me and is stuck in a property when I can just take that capital and put it into the market, buy options, do whatever I want, start a business, which is going to give me more of a rate of return than any real estate property that I'm ever going to buy, right? So there's many different things that you can do with that capital versus paying it off, my opinion.
Much respected opinion, much respected. I know there was a bunch of other questions over here. There should be a mic going around. Slipping. Fudge is dripping, man.
Now, when it comes to becoming a real estate investor, obviously there's levels to it. So, where would you recommend someone start? Something like wholesaling or buy and flip or buy and hold?
So what would I recommend you start? I think everybody should have their real estate license. I think it's a cheap, investment. $300, 75 hours out of your life, and you get credentials to be a licensed professional. You also get access to MLS, and you get access to other realtors and networking. The bigger your network in real estate, the more opportunities you have to find deals. That also gives you the ability to wholesale as well. A lot of states are now coming out with requirements. If you're going to wholesale, you have to have your license. I think that's something that's going to happen nationwide. But wholesaling is just an unlicensed realtor at the end of the day. But if you can build up a list of investors, then why not do both, wholesale and be a licensed realtor? Because it's a commission either which way. Whether you wholesale a property to an investor, whether you rent somebody an apartment, you sell somebody a house, you work with a buyer, you do property management, it's all streams of income, right? So once you build up your capital, I think investing where you are comfortable with, where you research, is very important. I think too many people are trying to buy properties in all these different places like Cleveland, Detroit, because they hear it on the internet and it sounds good, but you don't know Detroit, they steal your pipes, they steal your copper in a heartbeat. I'm telling you from experience. They're savages. They have chop houses for houses. You know how we got chop houses for cars? No, I'm serious. They have chop houses for houses. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life, right? So you gotta know the lay of the land. You gotta have people, boots on the streets. So I think if you're gonna start off investing, focus on your education, number one. Focus on real estate financing, education first. Focus on construction, whether you're doing buying flips or buying holds, bird strategies. You gotta run construction. You gotta focus on building your team. Very important. You need a mortgage guy or a mortgage girl. You need lawyers. You need property managers, contractors. You need everybody under the blue sun. And join groups, Facebook groups. There's plenty of investing Facebook groups out there. Listen to podcasts, Rants and Gems, the whole real estate podcast in the world. So it's a lot of different things you can do to start your real estate investing journey. But don't spend too much time with learning. At some point, you have to go out there and execute because experience is ultimately going to be your best teacher.
Now we got time for a few more questions. We're getting into the night. Hold on one second.
I want to ask, what's your intake on owner finance for, let's say, people that don't have credit or they don't have the funds to start, investing and stuff like that, or even owning a house?
So if you can find a seller that's willing to do seller financing, I'm all for it because you can probably get into a situation where you don't have to put no real money out of your pocket. Not what the bank is probably requiring because the owner's financing it. But I mean, now those terms are probably going to be insane for seller financing just because where the market is. You might be looking at a 10% interest rate on seller financing deals, but you know, they're available. I've purchased properties through seller financing. Look, everything's a tool, right? I don't care if it's NACA, VA, Sony May, FHA, who cares? Seller financing, go buy real estate. There's too many ways to slice this. Just go buy real estate. Just make sure you're buying it smart, make sure you know your numbers, make sure you have reserves, and just don't be house rich or cash poor.
Thank you.
As far as HELOC goes versus refinance, do you think one is better than the other, or what's the benefits of the HELOC and what's the benefits of a refinance?
There's no benefit of refinancing right now with these rates. So I wouldn't refinance or a cash out refinance right now. Only way I would do that is some of my investors, they have hard money loans where they probably at like 12, 13% and they burn and they have to get out of that. So we have to do a cash out refinance. So that's the only time I'm telling people to refinance is if you're in that boat. But if you're a traditional homeowner, you probably got like a rate 4% or lower. There's no reason to refinance. A home equity line of credit, I would recommend, but just be mindful of the market that we're in right now. We're in a market where there's a deceleration happening. There's not a crash happening. There's a deceleration, which it should happen because real estate shouldn't go up 20% every year. That's not normal. So we're in a market where 3 to 7% back to some normalcy is going to happen within the next 12 months. But be mindful when you're taking out your HELOCs because certain markets that might go lower, and you don't want to be house rich and have too much leverage, and then let's just say God forbid it does crash because none of us have that crystal ball, well except Ian. But if it does crash, then you could be upside down, and if you really need to sell at that point, you could be finding yourself in a particular situation.
Okay, we got
And so we have about 5-10 more minutes for the event. So I want to close it down now, just appropriate, and then we have some time to ask questions after this. So I think that's more important. We can talk to MG for a couple of minutes and Sonia. So with that being said, I think just in closing, one, I want to say thank you again for coming to the island. Hopefully get you out here more.
You know, I live on the island, right?
Oh, word?
Yeah, I live on the island.
Oh, see? I did not know that.
learn something every day.
So again, we're grateful to have you here. We're grateful to learn. And let's just give everyone a round of applause. NMG and Sonia, all the panelists around the applause for tonight. Sonia's still here after she hasn't left us. So I also want to ask all the panelists if you come up and take a quick group picture. Amari.